Hi, and welcome to the next section of this course, Filtering and Sorting, Handling Large Data. In this section, we are going to have a look at, first, what are arrays? And after we explore the array, we will start checking out the collections in detail. A collection can be broadly categorized into immutable as well as mutable collection. So under the topic of immutable collection, we will first explore the immutable list, immutable map, and also immutable set. After immutable collections, we will check out what are mutable collections. Now the difference between the immutable and mutable collection is that in case of immutable collection, you can only perform read-only operation. That is, you cannot edit the data within the collection once created. But in case of mutable collection, you can perform read and write operation both at any point of time you want to. And under this mutable collection, we will check out mutable list, mutable map, along with mutable set. So within these two categories, we will check out list, map and set of both of these categories. And in the end, we will check out special kind of functions such as filter and map that are used to filter the desired result along with modifying the result. So firstly, let us start with arrays. Introduction to array. In this video, we are going to talk about what are arrays in Kotlin, how to define them and how to use them. And trust me, if you understand the concept of arrays well, then from the next video onwards, it won't take much time to understand the Kotlin collection framework. Head back to the IntelliJ IDE and within the main package, let us create a new sub-package and name it as section 7. Within this, I will create a new Kotlin file and name it as arrays. Define your main function. And now within this I will define my arrays. So the syntax to define arrays in Kotlin is use the var keyword followed by, let's call it numbers, equal to use array. And now here the array expects what type of array you want to define. Here I want to define the array of integers. So I will use int keyword, that is integer, and as a parameter define the size of the array, that is how many integers you want to store within this array. I will use 5. That is the size of the array, right? And now give it a space and use the lambda. And now within this lambda expression, you have to define the initial value of all the integers. For example, if I use 0, then all the 5 integers will have the initial value of 0. Let me show you what I am talking about. Now, when this statement will be executed, what will happen is that internally Kotlin will create an array of integers. And our array will look like this. It will have 5 integers all with initial value of 0. Just because here we have defined the initial value of 0. So here these are all the elements having the initial value of 0. Now in case if I use -1 here, or let's say 2, then all the values will have the initial value of 2 like this. Perfect. Fine. Now currently let it be 0. Perfect. And you must be thinking, what about this index? What is it all about? So these index are actually the address of each of these elements. For example, the first element 0 is having the index of 0. That is the address of 0. The second element, which is again 0, is having the address or the index of 1. Similarly, the last element will have the address of 4. Fine, like this. Now notice here that here we have the size of 5, but our index start from 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. That is all the 5 elements. So make a note, whenever we have the size as 5, or suppose we have the index of 6, then the last element will have the index of 6 minus 1, that is 5. And henceforth the last value will have the initial value of 0 as defined here. Fine. So currently let it be the total size of 5. And now how to print out all of these values? So for that we can use the for loop. Let us define our counter variable. For example, here we are using the index, so here as well let us use index as well. Use the in keyword and define the range. So here our range is 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 like this. So I will use 0 dot dot 4. And now within this we can actually print out all of these numbers by using this variable of numbers, which is our array, with the index value, which is our counter variable, like this. Now suppose in future if we have number of elements as 6, so for that here we can't keep on changing it like this to 5. Fine. Here we need to find a generalized form. For example, instead of 4 we can use the array variable and use dot size property -1. So what we are doing here is numbers dot size will actually return 5, and then 5 minus 1 will be 4. So thereby we will get 4 in the output. Hence let us use the generalized form that we are using here, numbers dot size -1. And now let us complete our code by using the print statement. Let us print out the number at a particular index like this. And finally let us launch our application. Perfect, all the elements has the initial value of 0. And make a note that here we are just having the 5 elements. Fine, as per our size of the array. Now there is one more way to print out all the numbers. For example, we can use the for each loop. So for that we can use for and then use our number variable, use the in keyword, define the array like this. And now we can simply print out the number by using the num variable. So for us it is looking very easy, but for Kotlin internally what it is doing, it is running its own loop by using this syntax. So this is a more simpler way to print out all the numbers. So let us write a command line, this loop or that loop. Let us now launch our application. And there we go, the first 5 zeros belongs to the advanced for each loop that we have defined here, right? And the next 5 output belongs to the last loop that we have written down below. Perfect. Now let us explore the properties of the array. For example, the first property is that the arrays are mutable in nature. That is, once defined, we can change the value of all these elements. For example, suppose I want to change the value at the index of 2. So for that I will use numbers, that is our array of the index of 2, equal to, let's call it 54. So when this statement will be executed, instead of 0 we will get 54 at the index of 2. Perfect. So the element at this index will now become 54. Similarly, let us change the value at index of 4. So for that you can use numbers at the index of, let's call it 4, equal to 31, like this. After or, let us use a print line keyword so as to separate these two outputs, right? Let us now launch our application. And there we go, we have just modified our array from 0 to 54 and 0 to 31, like this. So the value has been changed at this particular location of 2 and 4, right? Now what if I use numbers at the index of 7 equal to, let's call it 9 or 11, like this. If you notice here, our array has a fixed size of 5, that is, it has the index of 0 to 4. Here we don't have any element at the index of 7, right? So in that case, what will happen if we run this application? Let's check it out. And there we go, we have got an exception, array index out of bounds exception. Now this exception occurs when we try to access the element which is not present in our array. That is, here we have the maximum index of 5, but we are trying to access the element at 7th index that does not exist. So this will actually throw the exception and your application will crash. So don't try to access the element which does not exist in your array. Always make a note of that. So our second property will be the array has fixed size. That is, once defined, you cannot modify the size of the array. So here are the two properties. Array has the fixed size. That is, once you define the size of the array, it can't be modified later. And next, the arrays are mutable. That is, you can perform both read and write operation. For example, here we are reading all the elements like this. And we can also write to the array, that is, you can actually modify the elements at a particular index, as simple as that. And now at the end, similar to the integer array, you can actually define the array for string, boolean, character, and so on and so forth. For example, if I define var names, that is list of names of the person, then you can use the same syntax, array of string. Define the size of the array. For example, if I want to define all the names present in the class, for example, 20 students of a class. And here I will give the initial value as, let's call it a blank string like this. So we are going to have an array of size 20 and initially all the names will be blank. And similarly, instead of string, you can have the array of Boolean values or float values or character values and so on and so forth like this. So that's all for this video.